Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dana B. with Charlie M. And as you know, we are part of the Mountain Patriots Educational Ministry. And one of the most important parts of Mountain Patriots is making sure that people understand the history behind this incredible country of ours, the United States of America. And if we do what we need to do, we can pass this down from generation to generation. And what we'll be doing, as you can see on my screen, is the Mountain Patriots Historical Educational Ministry Historical Podcast. We want to make America patriotic again. And here's the opportunity for people to be a part of history. We need kids, moms, dads, teachers, business owners, history buffs to bring these historical figures to life and be part of this time machine. And we've talked about having George Washington, who we'll have on, Thomas Paine, Daniel Morgan, Paul Revere. And this is our way at Mountain Patriots to celebrating our 250th anniversary, which started right here in Virginia, right here in the Valley. So we want you to step back in time. We want you to relive history and learn our heritage like never before. So I'm going to turn this off and I'm going to go back to our phenomenal guest who's really going to help get us started off, is our good friend Larry Johnson, the Liberty Man. And I'm going to turn it over to Charlie. As you all know, Charlie is our co-chair of Mountain Patriots Educational Ministries, and he's going to take us down a walk of history with our great friend, Christian friend and brother, Larry Johnson, the Liberty Man. Charlie?
Thank you, Dana. I appreciate that.
It's going to be
And,
fun.
and Larry, thanks for doing this. This is a
Yes.
wonderful opportunity we have to listen to what has happened in the past, and as Dana said, learn from it, and hopefully we don't repeat it. And if we have to repeat it, we'll do it right. But you are Larry Johnson. You're also the Liberty Man. So we'd like to start by learning a little bit about you, who you are, where you came from, what you've done before you became Liberty Man, before we jump into this history that you've been so kind to bring us. So tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would, Larry.
Well, first of all, my appreciation to what you're doing and making education concerning the founding of our country available to your members and to others. And it is my pleasure. I'm humbled by this experience to be with you and to and present the story of the founding of the United States of America through the eyes of my family, and that is the focus. I don't teach the history as you might find it in a history class in a school or a university or a course of study. I present the founding from the standpoint of a soldier and a family that went to war, found it necessary to fight for their freedoms and their independence. So that's why I'm here, and I'm ready to move forward with the program. And you asked a question about where did I come from before all of this started, and having lived a long time, I've been in a lot of places and come from a lot of different places. I was born and raised in North Carolina, and actually raised in the cotton fields and the tobacco fields, and then in my father's grocery store, and growing up with my grandfather, who was a carpenter and a primitive Baptist preacher. So that is my early beginnings. I was born in Raleigh, and my family moved to a farm community about 25 miles south of there, to a place called Coates, Coats. And so I went to school at the high school there in my community, and I decided that I would do two things at one time. I would join the United States Marine Corps, and if they would allow me to get an education, I would go to a university to get my education. And the way it worked out, that was permitted. I was trained, and then they said, we're going to provide you the opportunity to go to school. So I attended Campbell University, which actually was 4 miles from where I was raised in Coates, North Carolina. And I was pleased to get a job teaching, and I began teaching industrial education. And I worked for the state of North Carolina for 5 years. And the governor of North Carolina quite accidentally found out what I was doing with underprivileged children and decided that I was the person to try to expand that opportunity for children all over the state of North Carolina. So I spent 2 years doing that, created over 600 training programs like the program I had started in Cary, North Carolina, and it expanded all over the state into the 100 counties in the state. And I did, so I was involved in that for 5 years. And later, at the end of that 5 years, not the federal government, but a consortium of states wanted me to help them to start similar programs within their states. So I did
Nice.
that for 25 years, maybe a little more than that, 28, 29 years,
Wow.
to create vocational training programs and create the Vocational Industrial Clubs of America, which is now Skills USA. And their membership is over 500,000 students today. And during my tenure there, we grew to an organization of 300,000 students and 5,000 training programs. So with that, I did that and felt like that there were other opportunities for me, and I felt God's call, and I began to study for the ministry, and I was ordained a clergyman, and I left the job in Washington, D.C., even though I enjoyed it very much. During the time I was there, I worked with every president of the United States in developing training and gaining their support. I was never employed by the federal government except the fact that as United States Marine Corps is a part of the government, but never in my capacity to train young people to go to work and use their hands as well as their mind. So I started working with Lyndon Johnson, and the last president I worked with was Ronald Reagan, which was a wonderful relationship. I came to know him, and he came to support greatly the things that I was doing. But God's call was important to me, and so I began to train for ministry, and I did that, and I became a minister, and then later I was elevated in our church to become a bishop, which I still am, even though I'm trying to retire, and they have selected my replacement. So I can look forward to my retirement, I hope, soon. Even at the age of 88 years old, I can still look forward to some years, I hope. So I don't know maybe if you have questions about where I came from.
Well, what got you started being Liberty Man?
I beg your pardon?
What got you started as Liberty Man? Because you seem to have a mission to train children. Yeah, I mean you focus on children.
Well,
It's
what
so important.
motivated me to get, to start doing what I do now, dressing up in colonial dress,
Exactly.
and was that having children and then having grandchildren, I learned that my grandchildren knew nothing about their family, and being our family came to Jamestown very early on when the country was being founded there. We're not quite sure what year, sometime between 1620 and about 1640. And they fought in every single war. But when the American Revolution came, it seemed like my family went to war. Our home base was in Johnston County, which is in the center of the state. And being that it was where things were beginning to happen, where the British were moving south in trying to take Wilmington, they had already taken, well, this was about 1774, 1775. They were moving to take over certain properties and certain things in North Carolina. And the North Carolina State Assembly sent word out that there would be 10 militia units developed in North Carolina. That never happened, but a number were developed, and Johnston County boys and leaders stepped up and formed the 10th Regiment to serve North Carolina, to protect it from the invasion of the Redcoats. And so with that kind of history and that type of involvement of our family in the American Revolution, I felt like that my grandchildren and my children needed to know something about their heritage, because it's important for families to know about their heritage. It's also important for young people to grow up and be American patriots and to protect the Constitution and the things that we have that makes us a free nation.
And the militias back then
I beg your
were
pardon?
the militias back then were called Liberty Men, weren't they?
Um, Here's how that came about. They were Liberty Men, and that came about this way, is that there were many, many people who still supported the king in North Carolina. It was
Mm-hmm.
split in the beginning about 50-50. And my family, for example, their farms were located near Wilmington, just up north of there on the Black River. And the only place that we could buy anything that we needed that we couldn't raise on the farm was to go to what now is uh, it is Fayetteville, where the 82nd Airborne is, and others. And so we need to go because we could not grow salt. And you would go to the port to buy salt. Well, in and around the port were people that were being transported here by the king, Scotsmen that they had not killed off in Scotland, that were going to be punished. But the Scots that were sent here had to swear an allegiance to the king. And so they were loyal to the king. They didn't want to be hung. So they would hang around the ports. And when people such as my family would go to buy salt, they were, our family was abused because we had come here long before that generation of Scots got here. We would be abused. We would be molested. You could not take your family with you because of the danger of rape. And so you would go and be beat up, and you would go home. And so the state assembly decided that they would pass a law that no person supporting liberty could be abused, and if they were, the abuser would be hung. So they issued certificates or letters. And how I learned about and became Liberty Man was I got a copy of my great, 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 great grandfather Abel's letter that gave him protection. And it went something like this: to whom it may concern, be it known that Abel Johnston is a Liberty Man and is under the protection of the North Carolina Council of Free Americans, And if you should abuse these people, you will be hung.
Wow.
And you shall not
Amazing.
abuse them because they are liberty men. And when I read and found that, I was impressed. I was weak-kneed. The
Yeah,
hair stood
I would
up on my
imagine.
neck. And I
Kidding.
said, all of this history and my grandchildren's children don't know a thing about it. And thus began Liberty Man, who was buying the outfit that I have today is the first one that I bought. And I had my daughters and my daughter-in-laws to bring all, on a given day, bring all of our grandchildren to the Page County Library. And I bought all of these things, copies of constitutions. I was dressed in an outfit like, well, this outfit. And I set it all up, and my family brought the kids in, and I stepped out from behind the bookshelves, and I began telling the story of their family, of
Nice.
how our family fought for the American Revolution, how they fought for a Constitution. And I had a mock-up of the Constitution. It was the body, it was the Declaration of Independence.
Mm-hmm.
It was the body of the Declaration of Independence with no signatures. Now, I had one, a reprint with signatures, but laying side by side were these two documents. And after I finished introducing my kids, took about 2.5 hours, and these little babies and a couple in cribs that they don't know what happened. I asked them if they wanted to sign the Declaration of Independence and become a part of keeping America free.
I love it.
And so all of my grandchildren stepped up that could step up. Some were still in cribs, they couldn't. And they signed with a quill pen with India ink that Declaration of Independence.
That is
And that's how
fascinating.
Liberty Man got started. And well, no, wait, how it got started was that day there were people coming into the Page County Library, and we had
Right.
taken over about a third of it. And they began to gather around and watch Liberty Man teach his children. And after that, about a third of the adults there would not go home. They wanted to continue to talk to me. And several of them said, will you come to, by that time, school was out,
Mm-hmm.
teachers were there, and they started inviting me to go to their public school to teach them the things that they had heard me teach my grandchildren. And it was really simple. I taught the Declaration of Independence. I taught why we had to fight. I talked about being abused, not just when you go to buy salt, but in other ways as well. And then I talked about how our forefathers stepped up and fought, and I introduced a musket right in the public library. And some folks thought I ought to be arrested because I had taken a musket into a public place, but I was sharp enough to know and broke enough that I had not bought a real musket. I had bought a stage prop that looked exactly like a musket. And so I introduced the musket, the firing of it, and then I talked about how the musket has became an integral part of every family.
Larry, what
We can
year
get
was
into this
this?
later. I've gotten, I've taken off down another trail here, but
No,
we
but
get
what
into
year
that
was
later.
that you did the Page
So
Library?
that's how Liberty Man started. And
Fascinating.
people started asking me to go to schools from that. I got a chance to go to Warren County. I got a chance to go other places. And since that time, I put on probably during the past 14 years, I probably have put on maybe 2,000 programs. And one
And and
year,
and,
one
and
year I put on just before the pandemic hit, I put on 147 programs, which was
you
good.
did that in public schools and for homeschoolers
I
and
did it
private
there,
schools.
and I did it in the civic groups. I did it anywhere I could be invited. I did it in graveyards. I did it in funeral homes. I did it, oh gee, I don't know. I did it. I even put some programs on behind the coffee mugs and or the coffee makers and 7-Elevens.
I
Where
love it.
people would come, truck drivers coming in, and I'd gone in, I'd go in and get my coffee, and I was dressed up, see,
Hmm.
and they'd stop and they would say, "Who are you? Are you George Washington?" And I say, "Yeah, damn right I am." And of course, I got their attention. And then they would come out, "Oh, no, you're not." I says, "How do you know?" And they'd say, "Well, he's dead." I'd say, "Well, I'm just pulling your leg." And I would stand there behind the coffee pots and talk about freedom. And
I love it.
so anyway, that's how I got started. And since that time, I've accumulated everything a soldier would have and take to war. And probably more than what any one soldier. I have playing cards that were later taxed,
Taxed,
by the king,
right?
leading to part of our rebellion. Uh, Government stamps to show the kids exactly what had to go on. Anything that they touched or bought had to have the king's seal on it, or they couldn't take it home. And if they
Larry,
took it home, they would be punished. So anyway,
yeah, well,
that's how it got started. And
and I've had the privilege of
Boy,
pardon?
being
have we.
with you in a
Yeah.
couple of those programs that you put on,
Well, you
and
have become George Washington.
George
Yes, he
Washington, yeah,
has.
Yeah,
and
you have become George Washington, and it's wonderful that you do that and have
and
been with me in those places.
I
And to
was I
read
was
George Washington's prayer, that's one thing I ask Charles to be sure
yeah.
to always do. Introduce
George
praying
Washington's prayer.
because the soldiers, I'm teaching now. I guess
Well, I want to bring us back on track if you don't
I beg your
mind.
pardon?
I want to bring us back on track if you don't mind. Uh,
No, no,
what
I'm ready. Go ahead.
yeah,
Bring us
yeah,
back.
yeah,
I'm loving this. I could
because
sit here for hours.
we'll cover George Washington and some of those things more in future episodes. But what we'd like to do right now is to learn a little
Annie
bit
and Abel.
more about Abel and Ann Johnston and how
Right.
they got swept up into the war, back in your family.
And what was it like back then, Larry? And how does Abel and Annie's story begin?
I'm sorry. Ask me again.
How
How
does
does Abel and Annie Johnston's story begin? Tell us a little bit about them and what it was like back then and how their
Well,
story began.
Abel and when they got married, Ann was probably 15 or 16 years old, and
Right.
she was Ann Johnson,
Hmm.
and Abel was maybe 18, and he was Abel Johnston. And the things that I've worked out as to how they met was probably him rolling these big, huge barrels loaded with tobacco to the port and would have to pass her house or her farm. And that's probably how they met. I can't guarantee that. Probably those are called hogsheads, and they would hold 1,200 pounds of tobacco. And they had
wow.
an axle through them, and a couple of mules would pull that huge hogshead.
Right.
And that's how they got it from where Abel lived in Johnston County up to Edgecombe County, and then put it on the river there, which is the at Roanoke,
Hmm.
not 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 Roanoke where the country was, founded, not Roanoke Island, but a river named Roanoke.
Hmm.
And I'm only speculating that's where he met her because the Johnsons were very numerous in Edgecombe County. And I hate to admit it, but many of them were royalists. I've got
Hmm.
documentation on that. So he, no doubt, took her home and they were married. They were married by, uh, you had to be married and you had to buy a bond.
Okay.
If it didn't work, you had to pay the bond, or somebody did. I think we need to do that today. And so they were married, And
Fascinating.
and that that marriage certificate has been lost, and that's a part of the story I'll get into later. But you wanted to
Right.
know
We
how they
talked
met,
about that too.
and so he took her home to a place called Middle Creek, which is right in the center near
Okay.
Smithfield, North Carolina, just north of there. And he got a farm. Daddy gave him part of his. Amos was his daddy's name. Amos Johnston gave Abel Johnston land, and he began to farm on Middle Creek. And that creek becomes a very important part of the story, but that's for the end after we've had a number of hours together. So they
Yeah.
met. So now what happens is that they are being persecuted and attacked and robbed. The people there at Cross Creek, which is now Fayetteville, they needed to eat. And the Scots that had come there had no jobs, had no land, so they would rob, steal, and burn.
Mhm.
Sounds like a law firm, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Kill, burn, and
Dewey,
rob.
Cheatham, and Howe.
That's what they did. They killed, burned, and robbed.
Kill, burn, and rob.
Kill, burned, and robbed. And so they would come and they would destroy. They would take what you had because they had nothing. They were starving. Sad story, but you don't go kill people and rob people.
Right.
You can't do it. And so at that point, we knew we had to do something, and the state assembly passed a law that there would be 10 militia regiments organized, and one would be in Johnston County, which became the biggest, numerous because of the population centers there around Smithfield, and and so they began to organize militia and go to training, and so then the state asked them to begin to go to war.
So
And
Abel
I
joined
have
that militia.
and I have a list. The state historical society and Department of History in North Carolina has put together a complete list as best they can tell it, find it, as to all the battles that these boys were in, the 10th Regiment.
Wow.
And North Carolina University has done a tremendous job researching because of one man he was my professor. I didn't know this was going to happen, but he started researching and writing books on the North Carolina Revolutionary War and particularly the 10th Regiment. So we have a list from the history department in North Carolina that Abel's unit fought in 13 locations. Briar Creek was the first one. Briar Creek was the first place that the Marine Corps sent people to fight on the main continent. And so all of those boys were inducted into the Marine Corps. That's an interesting part of history, isn't it?
That
I ended
is
up in the Marine Corps not knowing this.
right.
And so, but they were defeated, soundly defeated. Now, the Marine Corps has never admitted that it lost the battle, but they had to escape or it would be annihilated at Briar Creek.
We won the war.
And I know Abel was there because the Department of History sent me a listing of soldiers that fought in the various battles, and Abel was there.
And Abel wasn't the only Johnston that fought in the war, too, right?
Are you kidding me?
It's a leading question.
I've got a book done by the North Carolina Daughters of the American Revolution, and as best we can tell, 33,000 boys fought from North Carolina, and most of them were in the militia. And so the story gets sad because of the going to war, being called away to fight. One of the first places Abel was drafted to go after Briar Creek was to Charleston. away from Anne.
Mhm.
And while he was away, Anne lost the baby. And I think that's because the the Scots came, burned the farm, and it was wintertime. They had nothing to eat, and Anne nearly starved to death, and the baby died for lack of milk because she couldn't produce milk. And so
Wow.
that was the beginning of their family,
And that's where
losing a
cousin
baby
Bernie came in.
because
Am
of
I
war.
correct,
Pardon?
Larry? Isn't that where cousin Bernie was the one that told Abel about the baby?
Yeah, his yeah, yeah, his our our
It's just a
our
small world.
I guess you would call him, he may be my uncle.
Uncle, right?
He may be my uncle, that he was drafted to fight, and he willingly and loved it, joined the Continental Forces,
Right.
and he was sent to Charleston, and he knew Abel was somewhere down there, and he actually found him and told him that Anne had lost the baby.
Mm.
And there was no such thing as going home on leave, do a family loss. You just had to suffer through it.
Right.
And so that's how he found out. Now they went on to have 8 more children, but they lost the first one. They had named it Abel Jr. And when that baby died, Anne decreed that there would never ever be another child in our family that would be named Abel, that would end the Abel line, Abel name. And that has steadfastly stood up. And there is Abel Johnston, and there are no more babies named Abel. So that's a part of that shows the pain,
Yeah,
the
it does.
hurt that's inflicted upon people during times of war. And that's the story that I try to tell. Um, I've been in some places where there would be mothers, and I tell the story, and they would be weeping in the back row
Right.
because they were holding their babies, and they would know what a young mother, probably 16 years old,
Right.
would have her baby and hold it and see it starve to death for lack of milk, for lack of anything. And all those things that we know that colonial women did, if they had food, they would chew the food up and put it into the baby's mouth. But if you're starving yourself and you have no saliva, that doesn't work. So life is hell during
Larry,
time of war.
you just brought up a real point, and I hope people gather from not only this, that the history that you're giving, but the fact that we take so much of our liberties and our freedoms for granted, not knowing what all of these people, especially that you're sharing with your family, what our generations have gone through to get where we are now. We just take
Absolutely.
so much for granted, and
Absolutely.
so
I agree.
we are so blessed for having you share this, and I hope that's what people take out of this. If you're listening to this, folks, you got to realize what people have gone through for your life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Larry, thank you. What a sad
Well,
story.
I try to make it real. In other words,
That's real.
I try
That's
to introduce it to people. This is not something that you're reading in a book someplace
no.
or watching on TV, everywhere you look, or on, all the things we got to
Right.
watch now.
Can
This
you
is
tell
life.
can you
Yes,
tell
Charlie.
us a little bit about the mindset of the people back then? Um, the the ones that were carrying the burden of the war going on. Was there patriotism? Was there um, how were people resigned to the circumstances they found themselves in?
Well,
Go ahead.
the circumstances, hard circumstances, and the things that I just described happening
Right.
created liberty men, created patriots,
Killing, burning, and
and
robbing.
and
Yeah.
and they carried the word patriot with pride. The
Mhm.
Latin translation of the word patriot comes from land. I don't know if you know that or not.
No.
Land, the Latin
Yeah.
comes from So you are a patriot if you care and love your land. Now, but there were a lot of people that sided with the king out of their own fears because the king was powerful.
Right.
These people that were rebelling, they were you know, not the gentry, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
They were those that were many times poor, like my family,
Right.
and then you had the landowners who had the slaves, and they patronized a lot of people. So when the war broke out, there were about 50% people that are loyal to the king because they don't want to give up what the king has been providing them.
Right. Sounds like
Little
today.
known is that the king gave payments, made payments to a lot of people. In other words, if you fought for the king, you just didn't go home from the war and start a new life. You went home with a pension. And if you did not support the king, your pension was ended. And some of those pensions have continued until the 1820s.
Wow.
So they took the bribery over freedom, kind of like we see today,
In other
Larry.
words, to keep you loyal to me, I will give
I'm
you
paying you.
a few pence.
Right.
I will get you. You fought for the king, you need to be reimbursed. You
They
need to
bought
be
them off.
paid. But the king knew that he needed friends. And then if it came time for a war, he could call them to fight.
Right.
And so about half of the people
Sounds like Antifa in
in North
Vietnam.
Carolina did not support
Yeah.
the revolution, did not support. Now, I want to get something squared away. Is that every time I use the word revolution,
Mm-hmm.
I am misspeaking for the boys and women and children that fought in the revolution. They never called this war a revolution. You will not find it in any letter. You will not find it in any diary. What did they call it? They called it the glorious cause. We're fighting for the glorious cause,
How many people know that?
not a revolution. Every time you see revolution, you think that that's not what our patriot fathers
Right.
said.
Wow.
They were fighting for something beyond themselves, something that they could give that would ensure that I can worship my God, that I can go pick up my salt without being abused, that I can have a child and my crops not be burned where my family starves to death. So we are going to fight, and we're going to fight with everything that we have for this glorious cause of what?
Freedom.
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 And free to be independent. Now you got to connect those two.
Right.
We don't usually do that. When you say it, you put it in a sentence, right? You say, well, they fought, American freedom is very, very important. Or you say, well, I'm going to read about the War of Independence. They never separated independence and freedom. They were synonymous. Independence was synonymous with the word freedom.
Right.
And the reason we have that is, or we are going to have that, is because we are fighting for a glorious cause. And that's not taught anywhere, except probably there is a book out, came out, my son bought it for me 8 or 9 years ago, where a very liberal writer began to study. I don't know what his intention was, but once he got into the history of what caused our people to fight and to sacrifice, he said there's no such word that they use in their diaries or letters or any place else. They weren't fighting for a revolution. They were fighting for a glorious cause, a cause that can only come from God Himself. God gives freedom, not a king. And that's what George Washington said time and time again. We are not fighting for a king. We are fighting for a cause. And that cause is, and the word glorious was a religious term in those days. When you said things like glorious, everyone knew that you were referring to God. Not glorious because it looks nice, it's new, it's shiny. That's glorious. No, the word glorious was a holy word, only to be repeated in prayers, in songs, when you were worshiping God. So now you come and tell me that this revolution was a secular event where a group of people got fed up with whatever they were fed up with, and they went to war. No person in those days, no soldier, no mother would have gone to war just for a revolution. What in the heck is a revolution?
They knew
What
what
is
they
it?
were fighting for.
And
I
that's
beg your
freedom.
pardon?
They knew what they were fighting for.
Freedom.
They were fighting for the glorious cause.
Yeah.
And well, anyway,
Yeah, well,
Oh, that was Larry. That was great.
we're about out of time. That's an excellent note to end on. And uh, Larry, did you have any final thoughts? I think you summed up everything very well. We'll talk about Abel and more about his service in the next episodes.
well, I'm
And
ready. I mean, I'm ready
yeah,
when you're ready.
oh
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
commend the
What
you men and the Mountain Patriots for venturing into this, um,
People
what?
need to know,
because it
Larry.
gives us an opportunity
Yeah,
to
thank you,
teach
Larry.
the real cause. Okay,
And
I'm ready.
just as a tease, as what's coming up. We're going to be in future episodes with Larry talking about the soldiers of the Revolutionary War and what they had and how they had to live and what they put up with. The flags in the battles are a couple of different episodes. We even have one on Daniel Morgan of Frederick County, some of the stories about the battles that went
Battles.
on, and the peace treaty and what happened afterwards, and the religion's role in the glorious cause.
The theaters.
Yeah, and then talk about the forgotten soldier. We have a lot of episodes coming up with with the help of Liberty Man, and we hope you'll stay tuned and watch us in the future episodes. But I'd like to thank Larry for sharing all of this information with us, most of which none of us have ever heard. And it's a fascinating look at the revolution or the war that King George put on against us, and we're going to try and make this into a series that lives on. Dana, did you have anything else you wanted to?
I think it's the perfect time for the Patriot prayer because it ties everything together. You want me to do it?
Yes.
I've got it right here.
Go ahead.
Ready.
Go ahead.
First off, I want to say, Larry, thank you so much. Charlie, thank you so much. And I hope people pass this on. Please share this and get this out to as many people because nobody really knows the history of this country. So this is the Mountain Patriots prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this beautiful world in the country that you have given us and the patriots who are willing to care for it. Thank you for inspiring our founders to create this beautiful republic, and please help us to keep it as the inspiring place to live. Please give us the wisdom to do the right things, the common sense to judge wisely, the energy to never give up, and in your unending grace, in which we take comfort, Lord Jesus, in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
And as we always say at the end of every Mountain Patriots episode, this one, Charlie,
It's in the book.
is in the book. God bless everybody.
I love it.